All right, we can go ahead and get started here. Hello and welcome to the Bridging Research and Practice Conference. I'm Kathleen and I'm with SHARE. This session is SHARE Evidence-Based Peer Practices with Ruth Hollman. Ruth is the founder and executive director of SHARE, the Self-Help and Recovery Exchange in Los Angeles, California, which has been providing peer services for 28 years with 54 employees in 3 locations. If you have any questions or any technical problems, please feel free to shoot me an instant message in the chat. Again, my name is Kathleen. I do ask if you could keep yourself muted during the presentation, and then at the end there'll be some time for questions and you can raise your virtual hand at that time. And you can take it away, Ruth. Thank you.
Okay, I hope I know how to do this. How is it going to let me change slides here? Oh, there we go. It changed it for me. Okay, so how do I go backwards? Previous, there we go. Okay. All right, so next. Oh, it's okay. So welcome, and a lot of people aren't familiar with the fact that there are, in fact, a lot of evidence-based practices for peer services, and a lot of the training that's done doesn't mention them. So today I'm going to go over only 5 of them. There are more than 5, but these are the most important ones: the helper therapy principle, listening and disclosing, and I had a slide like this, and I don't know why I'm not seeing it. So we'll get, oh, here we go. It's because I've got them in the wrong order. Okay. The helper therapy principle, listening and disclosing, recovery planning, self-help support groups, and peer bridging are the ones that we're going to be going over. So we're going to start with the helper therapy principle. The helper therapy principle states that the person who helps, the person who is helping gets more out of the interaction than the person who's being helped. Peers give people, they serve opportunities to help others so they get the benefits of helping. And we have to sort of, in our own heads, recognize that when I'm letting somebody help me, I'm actually helping them. And then we both can get that positive feeling of helping the other person. Helping others has positive health and mental health benefits and heals the helper more than the person being helped. Creating opportunities for people to help provides, improves their health, mental health, and self-esteem. So the key principle, helper therapy principle, key component is when people help others or even perceive they are helping others, they feel good about themselves in ways that improve their mental health, and functioning. What evidence is there that the helper therapy principle works? Well, among teens tutoring younger children, the younger children's grades improved with tutoring, but the teens' grades improved even more. So the teens who were helping got higher grades than the people they were helping, even though the people they were helping also improved. A majority of community health workers felt helper benefits, including positive feelings about self, a sense of belonging, and valuable work experience when they helped others. And recovery rates for alcoholics doubled if they were helping other alcoholics. There's some people call this the helper's high. Helpers report a distinct physical sensation associated with helping. About half report that they experience a high feeling. 43% felt stronger and more energetic. 28% felt warm. 22% felt calmer and less depressed. 21% experienced greater feelings of self-worth. And 13% expressed fewer aches and pains. So when we are helping somebody, or we let the person we're serving help us or somebody else, that's going to give them this helper's high and make things in their lives better. So the key question for the helper therapy principle is, are you letting the person help you or encouraging them to help others? So that's how we make sure that we're practicing the helper therapy principle, by letting the person help us or giving them opportunities to help others. Okay. When we're implementing this, it's important to look at what is good implementation versus not so good implementation. We call it high recovery. So if the peer worker is adept at creating opportunities for people to be the person helping, for example, finding a skill that someone has and having them teach that skill to others, teaching the person to use Word today and having them train someone else in how to use Word tomorrow, volunteering in the community, going to self-help support groups. Those are all really good ways of implementing the helper therapy principles. Low recovery would be where the peer worker lacks structure and approach to create leadership opportunities. The peer worker does projects and accomplishes things themselves rather than giving others the satisfaction of being leaders and making a difference. So you can see the difference there. Another way is empowering others. The peer worker listens for and implements participants' suggestions, such as having a Kwanzaa celebration, writing their legislative representative about something they want changed, starting their own business, putting on a program, inviting people to a recovery panel, etc. The peer worker lets the person help them. The low recovery is when the only opportunities to help are those created by staff and or directed by staff. The peer worker sees their role as helping the person and rarely lets the person help them. So you can see the balance that if we're implementing this properly, we should be making opportunities for the people we're serving to help out. Okay, next is peer listening and disclosing. So peer listening and disclosing, the definition is using active listening techniques and sharing one's own lived experience of the situation a person is going through. Peers do not give advice or suggestions unless specifically asked for it. Peer listening and disclosing is different from and complementary to clinical expertise because it represents a relationship of equals in which each is benefiting from the relationship of the other. So a peer relationship is equal. A clinical relationship is somebody with more knowledge helping somebody with less knowledge or with an issue. So what are the key components of peer listening and disclosing? So peers help others with similar challenges by understanding and sharing their own experience with I statements. And this is really important. A peer talks with I. They don't say you should do this and you should do that. It's all about my personal experience. Peers listen fully the whole time the person is talking without thinking about what they may say in response. So this is really important. There's been a lot of research done on communication. And one of the biggest problems in communication is that people only listen until they get the gist of what the other person is saying, and then they plan their response and miss out everything else that the person is saying. So making a commitment to listen the entire way through before thinking about how to respond, and then only only responding after the person stops talking. And it's perfectly okay to have a few seconds of silence after the person stops talking before you respond. And if you're concerned about that, you can tell the person that that's what you're doing, that I want to hear everything you have to say. And so I'm not going to, I won't have an answer immediately, or I won't be able to respond immediately. The other thing is that peers disclose only those parts of their stories that speak directly to what the person has shared. So they don't tell their whole story the whole time. They look for things that they can share that will join the person that they're talking to, that will create that relationship with the person. Okay. We have a little video.
I can't really hear too well.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. He was talking about how disclosing is giving somebody a key to open up themselves and to be able to see something and to make it so that to make that connection and to make it possible to see that things can go further properly going forward. I'm sorry, I'm not a great PowerPoint person, and I probably, when I shared, was supposed to hit something to do the sound. So this is our only video. So excuse me with that. All right, so peer listening and disclosing evidence. So studies have shown that peer listening and disclosing increases self-esteem and confidence, the feeling of control and ability to make life changes, a sense of hope and inspiration. This is what the person who has been disclosed to gets from this. Empathy and acceptance, engagement and self-care and wellness, all of these increase when somebody else has disclosed to them. Social support, social functioning, empowerment scores, and the sense that treatment is responsive and inclusive of needs. So this comes from SAMHSA, and these slides will be available after the conference. So if you want to come back and look at the references, you're more than welcome to do that. All right, so what's the key question for peer listening and disclosing? And that is your listening free from judgment or suggestion? Are you regularly sharing your own similar experiences in such a way that the person you are supporting feels connection and hope and is empowered to experience growth and change? So you need to make sure, this is a way of making sure that I'm doing this properly, because I need to be free from judgment and suggestion and only sharing those experiences that relate to that person, not what I want to share. Okay. And here we've got the high recovery and low recovery. So the high recovery is the peer worker discloses their own experience with similar issues, including how they felt, what they thought at the time, what worked and didn't work, without being asked. They use I statements in disclosing. So low recovery would be where the peer worker discloses only when asked and does not include their feelings or thoughts at the time. They express their experience in the form of advice or say such things as, you should do what I did. Another one is the peer worker discloses both their successes and challenges, including current challenges that they are encountering in their recovery that relate to what the person is going through. The low recovery is where the peer worker only discloses their successes and peers to be perfectly recovered without any problems. They hide their own setbacks from the people they are serving. And in fact, there's studies that show that peer workers who don't disclose what's actually going on with them, that do this low recovery thing, are at higher risk of relapsing and having mental health setbacks and committing suicide or attempting suicide. So it's really important that we be honest where we are and let the person know that we're not perfect in serving them. Okay, another one is the peer worker is open about their lived experience and treats the person being served as an equal and uses peer boundaries. The peer worker concentrates on connecting the person to non-paid social supports in the community. That's the high recovery. The low recovery is where the peer worker provides support using a clinical approach and/or clinical boundaries. One of the big issues in peer services is that peer services, when they are supervised by clinicians who don't really understand peer services, want the peer workers to have the clinical boundaries rather than the peer boundaries. And that undermines the effectiveness of the peer services. The person's social network is limited to professional relationships and other people at the clinic. It's like the social support is 40% of whether somebody is okay in health and mental health. And when the social support is limited, it makes it harder for that person to be okay in their health and mental health. Okay, the next one is recovery planning. And recovery planning is a way for a person to take charge of and control their recovery process by developing a written plan to help in their recovery. Okay, there are two main recovery planning tools. These aren't the only ones, but these are the ones that have been studied and found to be successful. The one that most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with is the RAP plan, which is a self-designated prevention and wellness process that anyone can use to get well, stay well, and make their life the way they want it to be. RAP has been linked to significant improvements in self-reported symptoms, recovery, hopefulness, self-advocacy, and physical health. And RAP is listed on the SAMHSA, that's the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices, because of research showing that it works. So if you're not familiar with RAP, please Google it and get familiar. They have all sorts of trainings you can go to. Okay, the SHARE Plan for Success creates a pathway starting from today to success in 5 years. But it doesn't do that by saying, what do I need to do today and what should I do tomorrow and next week and the week after? It uses what they call backwards design. And backwards design is a tool that they found in business management, that if you had business goals and you tried to build towards them, people did not reach their goals very quickly. They did it much better when they started 5 years down the road and moved backwards to today. So in backwards design, you start where you want to be in the future, 5 years from now, and work backwards to get where you are today. And it's an evidence-based practice. Again, we get this from the MBA classes, the management stuff. Okay, so let's take a few moments to make a 5-year plan for ourselves, okay? So first of all, we're going to exhale fully. So then close your eyes and inhale, taking 5 more deep breaths each time, exhaling fully. Now, imagine 5 years from now when you are successful. What are you doing? What makes you feel proud? What is worth celebrating? What makes you feel good? What makes you feel accomplished? Dreaming what would satisfy you in terms of being successful. Okay? And the idea here is not to write, I'm going to be president of the United States and a big movie star and a billionaire and whatever. It needs to be realistic things that would make you feel good in 5 years. So let's take a couple of minutes to write down what your 5-year goal is. And let me go backwards here. So if you want to take a couple of minutes to write down where you would like to be in 5 years. Are you still a peer worker? Do you have a different job? Have you gone back to school? Are you going to get a degree? Do you want to have a relationship? Do you and write down what you think would be what would make you feel that you were successful in 5 years. Does anyone need more time? If you do, unmute. Okay, so then you take your 5-year plan, and this is an example. All right, at 5 years, I'm living in Hawaii in a beach house that I own as a real estate agent. I then look at where I need to be in 4 years. In 4 years, I sell houses in Hawaii, saving all my commissions, sell my condo, and buy a beach house. At 3 years, I move to Hawaii with all my savings, and I buy a cheap condo to live in, get a Hawaiian real estate license, and start selling houses. At 2 years, I'm sell 20 houses in Los Angeles, save as much as I can. At 1 year, get a job at a real estate agent and begin selling houses, saving every penny I can. At 9 months, I'm going to take the California real estate exam. At 6 months, I get a supervising real estate broker to sponsor me for my real estate license. At 3 months, I finish real estate school. At 2 months, I research real estate brokers to find one likely to sponsor me. At 1 month, I continue at real estate school. At 2 weeks, I start real estate school. At 1 week, I fill out and submit real estate school application. Tomorrow, I get all the documentation needed for the real estate school application. And today, I research real estate schools in Los Angeles and pick one to apply to. So you see, by going backwards, I have a plan of how to get to where I need to go. And it's going to look the same as if I had gone forward, but by going backwards, the research shows that I'm more likely to get there, and also that my plan is going to be more realistic in terms of stuff going on. Okay, once the plan is developed, daily, weekly, or monthly commitments are made to a friend, a peer worker, a case manager, or written down. Because if you make a commitment to somebody, you're more likely to get it done. It's important that there are no consequences for not keeping a commitment, but lots of praise for the progress. When attempts to do something don't work, they should be looked at as learning opportunities rather than failures. And most people achieve their 5-year success in 2 to 3 years rather than 5, which is also really interesting in how this works. But the commitments are really important. And, have people make commitments of something they'll do. If they don't do it, there's no consequence for that. Okay, so here are the effective ingredients of recovery planning. The peer worker shows their own RAP plan and plan for success with their goals and commitments and talks about how it has helped them. They also talk about things that did not work out as planned and how they coped. Low recovery is where the peer worker gives someone the forms to use in recovery planning. The peer does not disclose their own recovery planning process or difficulties that they had to overcome or are still working to overcome. Again, it's really important to be the authentic self that is a flawed human being rather than the perfect person who is handing out recovery, because handing out recovery doesn't work. Also, the peer worker encourages the person to be ambitious and accepts the goals that the person wants to work on, even if they appear to be unrealistic. It's not my job to judge if these goals are unrealistic, okay? The low recovery is the peer worker tries to make sure that the person's goals are easily achievable and realistic to where they are now, because the person themselves will discover if their goals are too ambitious. And that's a good lesson for them. If I tell them that, they're less likely to discover it on their own. And when people discover things on their own, they don't have any shame about it. Whereas if somebody else is telling them, they get defensive and feel shame. And that is contrary to recovery. Another aspect is the peer worker supports the person in starting anywhere to reach their goals. Okay, it doesn't matter. And this is, I don't know if you're familiar with Procovery, but one of the things about Procovery, which is a support group for people in recovery from mental health issues, is it doesn't matter where you start anywhere. And if you're not happy starting with the most important thing, that's okay. Start with something that is not so daunting, and people will then at least get something done. So low recovery is when the peer worker suggests the next step towards the person's goals. Okay, self-help support groups are by far the most effective evidence-based peer practice. And that's why SHARE is totally devoted to self-help support groups. The American Psychological Association defines a self-help support group as a voluntary, self-determining, and nonprofit gathering of people who share a condition or status. Members share mutual support and experiential knowledge to improve persons' experiences of the common problem, the common situation. So experiential knowledge is really, really important. If I want to buy a car, I can go online and the dealer's going to tell me how wonderful their car is. But if I really want to know how about the car, I'm going to get better information from people who bought the car. And that's what experiential knowledge is. It's knowing what, it's having experienced it myself. And that's what self-help support groups give people, is that experiential knowledge. They sometimes talk about how the clinician tells you what you need to do, and the self-help support group helps you figure out how to do what the clinician wants you to do. So the key components of self-help support group is everyone in the group is an equal. And that doesn't mean that some people are paid and some people aren't. Everybody is equal. There's sharing or interaction between the members. Decisions are made by the group members, not by the leader or the clinic or whatever else. Leadership in the group is shared or rotated. And groups often use a written document called a format to explain the rules of the meeting at each session. This helps maintain peerness rather than having somebody say, verbally tell the group how the group is going to be run. And it also means that people are more likely to follow the rules if they're written down than if somebody is telling them what they are. And safety and anonymity are protected. Okay, the research about self-help support groups is huge and really incredible. So self-help support groups cut the rehospitalization rate of mental health consumers by 50%. So just by sending somebody to a self-help support group, they will be less likely to be hospitalized than another person. And then if they are hospitalized, it reduces the number of days spent in the hospital by a third. Okay, self-help support groups significantly reduce the amount of medication needed to treat mental health issues. And this is in blind studies. That means the psychiatrist didn't know who was going to a self-help support group or not. And they gave less medication to people in support groups than those not in support groups. Self-help support groups move large numbers of people out of the system into productive lives. Participants are more likely to collaborate with clinical staff regarding taking medications and following clinical stuff. And of course, somebody's calling me and I'll have to attend them. I can't talk their call. The effects of self-help support groups are realized in weeks and sustained for years. So very quickly, people get better and have better outcomes once they're in a support group. They reduce drug and alcohol abuse. They reduce demands on clinicians' times. They increase empowerment. They provide community support. The suspected reason that people in developing countries recover from schizophrenia at nearly twice the rate they do in developed countries. So in the US, we have this idea that once schizophrenic, always schizophrenic. And that's not actually the case. The World Health Organization has found that in India, 67% of the people diagnosed with schizophrenia will after 2 years from diagnosis, they will never have another psychotic break. In the US, that's only 30% of people with who are diagnosed with schizophrenia will, after 2 years and going forward, will never have another psychotic break. And this study has been going on for 60 or 70 years now. And so there's a tremendous amount of hope for people with schizophrenia, particularly if you give them community support. Okay, self-help support groups provide mentoring opportunities that improve the outcomes of both the mentor and the person being mentored. That's the helper therapy principle. And in fact, the man who coined helper therapy principle, Frank Reisman, he discovered it by studying people in self-help support groups. Self-help support groups reduce criminal behavior. They increase family resources and reduce family stress. They increase consumer satisfaction. And in fact, the number one mental health intervention with the highest consumer satisfaction as measured by Consumer Reports is self-help support groups. So if you want people to have higher satisfaction in your agency or something, get everybody going to a self-help support group. Self-help support groups are underutilized by clinicians because of incorrect preconceived ideas about self-help and the lack of professional training on self-help. And this is a real travesty because these almost free groups are available in the community and online, and people should be making use of them. So the key question for self-help support groups is, are you attending self-help support groups and using the lived experience with them to give the benefits to others? Because when I share I'm going to a self-help support group, when I disclose that to somebody, it makes it more likely that they're going to try a self-help support group. And if they try it and like it, they're going to have a much easier recovery going forth. There are all sorts of self-help support groups. Alcoholics Anonymous is just one of the many groups that are out there, but Recovery International is incredibly good for people with mental health issues, CODA for people dealing with relationship issues, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families for people dealing with child abuse and other trauma, Debtors Anonymous for learning how to use money, Nicotine Anonymous. There are all sorts of different support groups that are out there. Los Angeles itself has more than 12,000 support groups with 750 different focuses or foci, depending on how good you are at Latin or Greek or whichever it is. I think it's Latin. Okay. Self-help support groups work best when the worldview of the person is matched with a group with a similar worldview. So, for example, in substance abuse, 12-step programs, people do best when they have a belief in a single God. Secular organizations for sobriety works well with people who don't have a belief in God, either they're agnostic or atheist. Smart recovery works for people who don't want to share their personal business in public, and Free in One works best for evangelical African Americans. So there are lots of alternative groups. If somebody doesn't like one group, there are others. And if you need to find groups for somebody to attend, please call Share at our toll-free number, which is down here, the 1-877-SHARE-49. We'd be happy to point you in a direction if somebody doesn't like a particular group they're in and wants to find another one. What's wonderful about support groups is there's no need to make an appointment or call beforehand. In most groups, people just show up at the day and time of the meeting, and that's also on Zoom. You don't have to make a reservation. A few meetings want to screen their people beforehand, but that's rather rare. Groups that are most effective have tools that help members change and grow. They're available in many languages and are easy to start for a new language. So if you have monolingual people who are looking for a support group, please talk to Share. We can help you get a group up and running. Most groups ask for a small donation between $1 and $5, but nobody's turned away for lack of funds. And we recommend that people try a group 6 times before they decide whether it's working for them. And this is because the way one learns in a self-help group is very different than a classroom situation. And people don't really understand how they're learning until they've been there about 6 times. So we encourage people to try a group 6 times before they start. So what are the effective ingredients of self-help support groups? High recovery is peers with the same level of power, none of whom are paid, attend a support group addressing a common concern. Leadership and decision making are provided by the members. So the members provide their own leadership and their own decision making. Low recovery is where a paid peer specialist leads the support group in discussions, addresses disruptive behavior, and makes decisions for the group. That's not as effective. High recovery is where referrals and information about community-based self-help support groups are available to all participants, because these groups are all over the place, not just in clinics. Low recovery is groups are held only at the mental health facility and or are canceled when the room is needed for other uses. So, let's not make that happen. Okay. Safety. In high recovery, crosstalk, which is where others interrupt or comment on someone's sharing, is not allowed in the high recovery self-help group. And the not using crosstalk is enforced by any member of the group with gentle reminders. So, just to say something, okay, I believe that's crosstalk. Please save it till after the meeting, is fine thing to say, not to shame anybody or make them feel that they're being yelled at. And anonymity is expected and protected. Low recovery is where the leader has the right to ask anyone to leave without hearing their side of the story or giving them opportunities to improve. People who are not peer members of the group enter the group without the group's permission. Staff create clinical notes about what happens in the group, identifying individuals, and there's a sign-up sheet for members so that it's not anonymous. People don't know who's going there. In the high recovery, each person has a right to due process in the group and is given opportunities to change disruptive behavior before the group takes action to exclude the member. If someone is asked to leave, it is only for 1 or 2 meetings, not forever. So low recovery is disruptive people are banned from attending the group without being given a chance to change their behavior. There's nothing worse than showing up because I know that I'm sick and need to get better and to be told I'm too sick for the treatment. So that's where, making sure we give people opportunities to change their behavior is important. Finally, we have peer bridging, which is really putting together all of these evidence-based practices and using it to support a person moving from one situation to another by a peer with similar experience. So examples of peer bridging is helping somebody move from inpatient to outpatient, from homeless to housed, from an inmate to community. Those are all examples of moving people. Okay, the key components. Ideally, you want to get to know the person that you're bridging before they're in their new situation. That's not always possible because sometimes you can't go into the jail, or the person gets housed and you want to house them immediately. You don't want to have to wait for the peer bridger to meet them homeless before they move in. The peer bridgers normalize people's fears, concerns, and feelings by disclosing their similar lived experiences. Okay, so that's listening and disclosing. They connect people to self-help support groups. That's self-help support groups. They use recovery planning to empower the person to move forward. That's recovery planning. They use helper therapy principle, finding situations where the person being served is the one providing the help. And they serve as a support and role model for going forward. What's the evidence about peer bridging? So peer bridgers reduce rehospitalization by 50%. They reduce psychiatric emergency room use in favor of outpatient services. They succeed in getting 60% of the people going to self-help support groups, which reduces the cost of treatment, increases employment, reduces drug and alcohol use, et cetera. All of those good things that we discovered earlier on self-help support groups. What's the key question in peer bridging? Is the peer bridging empowering the person served and walking together as the person makes their own decisions and moving from one situation to another? Using the helper therapy principle, listening and disclosing, recovery planning, and self-help support groups. So that's how I know I'm on track if I'm doing peer bridging. What are the effective high recovery and low recovery? Where the peer worker integrates the practical parts of the change with their own experience with a similar change, including their feelings, hopes, fears, challenges, etc. They respect the feelings, fears, etc. of the person being served. Low recovery is where the peer worker sees that the practical parts of the change are taken care of, and the peer bridger does not connect with the person regarding their feelings, hopes, fears, and apprehensions. They reassure with little or no disclosing. So this is the we're all business place, and that is less effective and not likely to get the same results that when we disclose and when we talk about feelings and go forward. Okay, another one. The peer worker recognizes the individuality of the person they're working with and supports them where they are, even when they have different assessments of the situation and or different perspectives or worldviews. They recognize that everyone has a different recovery journey. One size does not fit all. Low recovery is where the peer worker expects that person that they're working with have the same worldview as they do, and thus will handle the situation in a prescribed way. They may assume that people need the same recovery tools that the peer worker has used. They judge the person served as wrong rather than as a human being best able to make their own decisions. Okay? The difference here is whose perspective is important. This is, the high recovery is when the person I'm serving's perspective is most important. The low recovery is when I'm imposing my perspective on the person. In terms of role, the peer worker sees their primary role as helping someone discover their own path to recovery, including setting their own goals, deciding what is important to them, and connecting the person to non-paid social support in the community. Okay, the low recovery is where the peer worker sees their primary role as solving the person's problems and connecting them to other professional services. The goal here is to get the person that 40% of social support that's going to improve their health and mental health. I mean, medication, to give you an idea, is only 10% of what goes into health and mental health, whereas social support is 40%. And the clinician services are about 20%. So you give them more if you connect them with the community than you do with clinical services, though that doesn't mean you shouldn't connect them with clinical services. But if you only do that, you're not doing the best you can for them. Another effective ingredient is relationship building. The peer worker prioritizes the relationship with the person they're working with. Other issues are secondary. For example, the peer worker starts the session together with a check-in as to how things are going, including a short, honest update on their own recovery before moving other issues and paperwork, before moving to other issues and paperwork. Okay, the low recovery is the peer worker is all business and struggles to build an authentic relationship with the person. The peer worker's focus is on checking off everything they need to get done with that person today. So relationships are everything is the thing to remember here. What happened here? Whoops, is that the end? Oh, and that is the end. So thank you. And now we'll open it up for discussion and questions.
I have a question. My name is Susan. I'm from the Purpose of Recovery. And I've been dying to ask this question. Can you give me, you did give me an example of the backwards plan. Can you give me that on a smaller scale? So I got the 5-year plan of buying the house, but could you give me an example of how that works on something smaller? Like,
So did you write down a success goal that you'd be willing to share with us?
I did not. The only thing
Did somebody write one down that they'd like to share with us? And we can just go through it right here and now.
Okay, it felt really big.
Yeah, well, the idea here is to show you what can be accomplished. I mean, one of my favorite stories with this is we got a contract to help move people out of board and cares so that there would be more places for people coming out of hospitals to go. And we went into the board and care and we did the 5-year plan. And there was this guy who, lived at the board and care. And every day he woke up and got dressed because he was required to and made his bed. He didn't bathe. He drank alcohol most of the day and just lay on his bed. So his 5-year goal was to get a job working at a 7-Eleven. Okay. And we took his goal, 7-Eleven. He wants to work at a 7-Eleven. So what does he have to do in 4 years? Well, in 4 years, he has to, start looking for a job. In 3 years, he needs to, have his mental health in order. In 2 years, and when we got down to today, he stood up and started pounding his chest, and he says, "I need to stop drinking." And 6 weeks later, he was working at a 7-Eleven.
Wow. Okay.
Is that helpful? Is that an easier one?
It is helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Could I add something, Ruth?
Yes.
If that's all right. I found these SMART goal worksheets more on a daily, for the first day, or the week, a weekly SMART goal worksheet. So it gives you the time, how many times of how much time you'd spend on it, and how many days out of that week you would, and if you completed the goal on time, or were you able to do it that day or that week, and then you can go down the list. So I found that a little bit more more realistic, or minimized it into more of a day or a week, if that makes sense. So.
Okay, so and that is great. If you do the first design to begin with, get anywhere. That's the research goes.
Sorry, you're breaking up.
Got to do it from where. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to
Okay, let's see if my internet gets better.
That's better already.
Okay, so the when you try to start today and go someplace, you don't get there. Back in the day, before we had Google Maps and MapQuest and Waze and all of those things, when you figured out how to get someplace, you looked at the starting point, you looked at the ending point, and you worked backwards from the ending point to get to the starting point. And that's what makes the difference. Even though that piece of paper looks the same at the end on how it's going to go, the research shows that if you do it backwards and then do the commitments every day or every week, that you're in a better place. Go ahead, Adrian, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, I was, the 5-year plan, a goal. At what time or how early should they be before they make a goal to that distance?
We do it day one. So if somebody comes in to share and wants to, get a job or volunteer, we have them do the 5-year plan for success. As soon as they move into housing, we have them do the 5-year plan for success. It's just a way of seeing what they're interested in. And what's important, there's this, we find jobs for people that are jobs that they want to do, not a job that they have to do. And by looking at the 5-year plan, you can find out what they really are interested in and going forward. So we do it first thing right off the bat.
Okay, thank you.
There's 64 things in chat. And anybody's welcome to attend any of the share support groups online. All right, let's see. How to do better, how to get more people at your support groups. We can talk to you about that. I'm just looking here to see what else I've got, if I've got more questions here. All right, it looks like this is just people signing in. Okay, great. So any other questions or comments?
I think there was one question at the end from Jan. It says, I'm wondering if there's a time it's more effective to share less and focus on the other person's story and validating their experience, or is it better to be sharing more personal experience always as a support?
Okay, so you always want the focus to be on the person I'm working with, okay? And they'll let you know whether they want to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and not hear much from you, or whether they want to hear something from you. The main thing is to figure out what I can do to match, to build that relationship with them. I mean, one of my favorite stories about this was a man who was a community service volunteer for us. And he had finished his hours and he wanted to stay on, and he was afraid to ask if he could stay on. And he was like our first community service person ever that we had. So he didn't know that we had a policy of anybody could come. So he finally got up the nerve to ask me if he could stay. And I said, absolutely, you're more than welcome to stay. We'd love to have you here. And the next day he comes in and he stands over me, big, tall man. He stands over me at my desk and he says, do you know I'm a paranoid schizophrenic? And I'm dissociative disorder. I hear voices, but not schizophrenia. So I was able to say to him, you're paranoid. So am I. I'm paranoid too. And he's shaking his head there like, how could this be something positive? And he stayed with us until, he actually, he died of old age at Share. And it was just amazing how that worked for him. But, I may not be schizophrenic, but I can say when he says he's paranoid, everybody's been paranoid sometime. So we can say that without a problem. Other question, what do you suggest about redirecting a peer to focus on themselves and not so much their spouse, family member, friend, and such problems? Okay, so what I would do is I'd refer them to Al-Anon, because Al-Anon teaches people that you can't change other people. And the best way to change other people is to change myself and to stop being on their case about what they should be doing. Because when I tell somebody to do something, unless I'm paying them a lot of money or I have a gun in my hand, they're not going to do it. They need to find out these things organically, and they do that by learning, by having life happen for them on their terms. Any other questions? So I invite you to go to the SHARE website. Oh, do you suggest techniques to help peers with some lived experience in mental health and substance abuse, but not in justice involvement to connect those? It's the same thing. People are people. And that's one of the whole concepts of peer services, is that people are people. And if we start categorizing them as these sorts of people need this and this sort of people need this, we take away dignity from them. And when I give people dignity and trust, they're going to come back with dignity and trust, and they're going to feel better about this. Not really a question, but a comment. I always find these types of trainings validating and helpful for learning different strategies. Thank you. Appreciate that. This is my life's work. And it's amazing, people think that homeless people don't want to be housed, and it's not that they don't want to be housed. They don't want to be controlled. And that's where our SHARE collaborative housing program, which we have a presentation on later today, is all about giving people complete control over their own lives in a housing program that houses people immediately on the same day they call. 41% of our people who call us move in within 24 hours, which is pretty incredible. Yeah, we really like it. There's a comment on high recovery and low recovery. And we really like that as a way of really just gently telling people what doesn't work, because it's so easy for people to fall back into the medical model, and the idea that an expert needs to know more and to, this is a way that we get a doctor with an incredible amount of knowledge to be able to treat a whole bunch of people, without having to get involved with each person. And that's great if you've got somebody with, knowledge, and that knowledge is scarce. But it's a totally different thing when you want to support people in improving their lives. And, my job as a peer is initially I'm their best friend, but the whole idea is to get them a real best friend or a whole bunch of real best friends. Have you written it up anywhere? Can we cite it? And the answer is we've got this PowerPoint that you can cite, and the PowerPoint will be on the website as soon as we figure out which website they want us to put it on, and then that sort of stuff. But we'll send out a notice to all of you when stuff goes up on the website. But you can always do personal communication. And, like I said, these PowerPoint slides have the research attached to them that you can go looking for. And if you need more, we do have, it's like on the self-help support groups, we have a handout that I think is on our website with all of the research cited for each of the things that the self-help support groups do. Yes, we would love to have you get the PowerPoint for this session, and we would love to have you share it with everybody you can so that we don't get to the place. I mean, you know, one of the things in California with peer certification, they have 19 things that you have to do. There are 19 things that you have to do for to be certified, and only 2 of them relate to peerness, which is totally ridiculous. You know, and this is what happens when people who aren't peers or haven't been doing peer services, or people who haven't been doing research on peer services write up what it's supposed to be. And it's really sad. So please share widely. You know, all of our stuff is copyrighted, so don't sell it, but you can share it. We have no problem with you sharing it.
We have some time. What are those 19 things?
I have to go look them up. It's so ridiculous that, let's see, where's the quickest place for me to find those? Possibly here. I
think Caitlin put something in the chat.
Downloading, there it is. It's taking time to open because it's a large PDF from them. The core competencies. Here we go. Let me share this with you. Oh, excuse me, they're only 17, but still. All right, back here, share screen. These are the core competencies. So the concepts of hope, recovery, and wellness. That's across the board. The concept of the role of advocacy, the role of consumers and family members, psychiatric rehabilitation skills, you know, cultural and structural competency, trauma-informed care, group facilitation skills, which are actually counterindicated for peer stuff because you do better with the self-help support groups.
Yeah, that sounds a little clinical.
Yep. Self-awareness and self-care. Everybody has to do that. You got to, everybody, you know, all clinicians need to know about co-occurring disorders, conflict resolution, professional boundaries and ethics, preparation for employment opportunities. This is, you know, so what are the 2 that we think are, you know, digital literacy? I mean, none of these make any sense, right? Nothing about disclosing, nothing, you know, maybe the role of advocacy, nothing about evidence-based practices. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you unless somebody is copying this down.
Thank you. That was great. I just was curious. I appreciate that share.
But you can see how awful it is. You know, when there's this wealth of really important information that hopefully this conference has been giving you a lot of that information today. How's the conference been? People liking it? Thumbs up, thumbs down, wishy-washy? Okay, good. Yeah, well, we're going to be doing this again next year. And we only had 3 months to put this in place this year, so it'll be better. Oh, and we've got somebody sharing the UK list of competencies.
So I have a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
how would one go about proposing to, I don't even know who, honestly, about like the group facilitation, group peer support? I'm with the Happier Life Project, and we have a group peer support that we have began. We did some training. We're still going through some training to get certified. It is in another state, but the curriculum is phenomenal, and it can be tailored to any specific diverse group setting. Who would I talk to about that? Of actually like looking at that, or what is to pick? Because I know that's one of the competencies, group facilitation. Like, who's choosing what that group facilitation looks like?
Well, and that's where we totally recommend a format, the written format that we talked about and earlier, but will be on the structure of self-help support groups is about how to put one of those written formats together. People don't like it because you can't bill if nobody's in the meeting. So we've been able to convince our funders that having the place for the meeting and having somebody on hand if there's a problem with the meeting is billable, so that we don't put our staff into the meetings, which then reduces. It's like if you have a designated leader in a meeting, there's a 90% dropout rate compared to only a 40% dropout rate in a self-help support group. Okay. It's like, and that's, somebody was asking, how do you get more people to the meeting and stuff? So the evidence, the best study that I've seen on getting people to the meeting is having a clinician or somebody in authority recommend the group, and then having that person pick up the phone and hand the phone to the person, and call somebody who's already in the group and hand the phone to somebody, to the person in their office. And that is highly effective in getting people to show up to the group, because it overcomes the social anxiety. And the person will say, I'll see you there on Tuesday, in terms of what's going on.
I had asked that question, Ruth, and I just noticed where I am working that it would be more on this, maybe the team or talking with the team to share or empower, to encourage to come to the self-help group, or something on that kind of situation that I would see. That would be something we would be noticing where I work, is doing on that instead of the clinician turning the phone over to somebody else.
Right. Or whoever turning somebody over, you want to give them that peer experience. Because if I'm leading the group and I'm getting paid to do that, and I say, oh, the group is wonderful, come to it, everybody hears that a little bit differently than when they talk to somebody in the group without me there, who says, oh, you should really come to the group. It's really helped me in this way, that way, and the other way.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting it's time to wrap up whatever. So thank you all for coming. I had 63 participants. Wow, that's really great. And please come back. Oh, we have the supervision of peer workforce conference coming up in April. That's also free. When we get funding for these things, they can be free. And we also have the Western Recovery Conference, which is by and for peers over 2 days in March. And that is $25 if you're employed and $5 if you're not. and is often, is a really great, we have over 70 presentations in that, and we are looking for people to present at the moment. So please remember those 3 conferences, and hope to see you at this conference next year when we already have funding for it, so you don't have to pay.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was awesome. And thank you all so much for coming. And the next meeting begins at 3:30. It's Peer Employment Learning Center. So feel free to hang out, or you can log out and log back in, but that will get started right at 3:30. So thank you again.
Thanks.
Hi, Chris. I just made you a co-host.
Oh, hi, Kathleen. Thank you. Also, my colleague Scott, if you could do him when he comes on, it'd be
Yep.
great.
I have Scott, Patricia, Lori, and Rita.
Oh,
Does it-
thanks, Kathleen. And Patty's going to be with us too. Yeah.
Patty. What's Patty's last name? I don't have it.
Patty Bloom, B-L-U-M. I better turn the.
Hi, Scott. I just made you a co-host. Did you want to wait until the end for questions, or did you want to do any breakout rooms, anything like that? Sorry, you're muted.
I'm sorry, yes. We'll wait till the end. We have a section called out for that.
Perfect. Lori, is this Lori Ashcraft? I just see Lori. I just want to make
Yes,
sure.
that's Lori.
Okay. Got it. I'm going to make you a co-host, Lori.
And there's Patty.
Cool. Patty, I'll do the same for you. All right, so is that everybody, or are we?
Rita is the only
Rita.
one. Yeah.
Gotcha. We'll wait. I mean, we've got time, about 12 minutes until we get started.
We have some early birds.
Yeah, I think there might be stragglers from the last one too.
Gotcha.